Okay, well, in our last video, you may recall we opened up this retail packaging for the Intel Math Coprocessor, specifically the 8087. And I had mentioned at that time we're going to put this in the 5150 and see how this improved things. So I thought I'd take this a little bit further and let's just walk through kind of what our options are. So of course we have our original processor. So this is the Intel 8088 and it's operating at 4.77 megahertz. If you wanted to increase the performance of this, as I mentioned before, you could always add, and this would be specific to math or floating point performance, you would add an Intel 8087. This is what we opened last time. And again, it operates at 4.77 megahertz. Now, some enterprising companies, specifically NEC, decided to reverse engineer the 8088, and it came out with something called the NEC V20. And we'll do some speed tests, but we'll find that essentially for the operations that we're doing, you get about a plus 10% performance improvement just by optimizing some of the instructions on the 8088. And again, it runs at 4.77 megahertz. And for the most part, that's it. This is basically all you could do. One option would be maybe to increase the clock speed itself, but that meant going into the machine. You also might mess up some timing and things like that. And so it was a couple of years later, specifically in 1986, a company called Orchid designed this beautiful card. It included a new processor, the 8286. It allowed you to actually continue to use the original 8088, and it even has a spot for the Math Coprocessor. So I'm going to put this in the machine as well, and this will give us some more testing options. So specifically, we can add an Intel 8286. Don't ask why, but essentially it runs at 7.12 megahertz. I'm going to do a deep dive on this card, on the Orchid card, and we're going to talk a little bit why those strange numbers come up. But just as we did before, we can introduce a Math Coprocessor. So this is the Intel 80287. The original, because these are coprocessors, they do not need to run at the same clock speed, and in fact this will run at 4.77 megahertz on that card. And then later Intel introduced something called the 80287 XL. Now it actually runs at 8 megahertz, or in this case 7.12, and essentially this chip here, what it was is essentially a 387, so an 80387, so a later generation coprocessor which went with a later generation processor, but they ended up kind of backporting the optimizations that were done on the 8387 into this chip. Now this would have been introduced much kind of later in the life cycle. This is about 1990. When you consider that the original 5150 came out around 1981, this would kind of get you a 10-year product cycle of trying to improve performance a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you kind of the test bench for the original. I'm going to show you the test, how that test performed in the extreme, and then we're going to summarize my findings later on in terms of what we found. So enjoy. Okay, so in order to do our testing, I decided to break out Turbo C and write my own tester. This is the result. It actually runs 5 different tests of Manobro. For those who remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, fractals were all the rage. So I thought I'd write a Manobro calculator. I'll show you the image in a bit. Then a finance one, and then the traditional whetstone, which is kind of your common floating point test suite, and then dry stone, which will basically check integer performance, so nothing to do with floating point. I'm going to hit the timer here, and I'm going to have to speed things up because this will take quite a bit of time, but I'll just do it's running. It's not so close, and we'll fast forward here in a bit. Okay, so just over 15 minutes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in our 286. I'm going to put in going to go to the extreme. I'm going to put in the 287 XL, and we're going to compare the two. I'll tabulate everything, but just to kind of give folks a visual on the low end and the high end. Okay, I have the 286 in the machine. In fact, the software will report that. It says it sees that the processor is a 286, and it also sees the math coprocessor. So let's run our benchmark again with the 286 with the math coprocessor. Look how fast that is. We're already on the whetstone. Now we're on dry stone. Here we go. I was a little delayed there, but under 30 seconds when before we're over 15 minutes. So that's over 60 times faster. I also promised I'd show off the Manobro image, so there we go. This is the calculated image. It's using ASCII art. I don't know, I thought that was kind of a fun and whimsical thing to add to the program. Okay, well, we're going to summarize our findings here in a moment. Okay, well, I've completed all the testing. It's a fair amount, and I just kind of summarized by showing you the two ends, but let's walk through my findings here. The baseline, again, we have the 8088, so we're going to say that this is 1x, and if you recall, it took over 15 minutes. By adding the V20, so this is the V20, by adding the V20, we got on the integer side about 1.2, actually quite respectable, but we're using the same math processor, so this is about 1.1 times better, and this gets us just over 13 minutes. So still quite a bit of time. When we add the math coprocessor, depending on which of these two processors we have, we're either going to see 1 or 1.2, right? Because the math coprocessor only helps us with floating point, but in floating point, the performance improvement is quite shocking, either 24 or 25 times faster. So we got right around 70 seconds here. So you can imagine the motivation for doing a math coprocessor if you were doing science and data or a financial institution, etc. You really saw a huge performance boost. Now, if we just bumped from an 8088 based architecture to the 286, we saw a respectable 3.2 improvement on both sides. Just bear in mind that floating point operations, if you don't have a math coprocessor, basically is going to give you the same type of performance improvement that we saw on the integer side. Adding the original 8287, we wouldn't see a change here again because for Remember, the math coprocessor only helps us with math. But we only actually saw a bit of a modest improvement here. It's about 28 times. Oh, I should mention. So this gets us down to about 5 minutes from the 15. Makes sense. And so this, now we're in about the 45-second range. Now, last but not least, with the kind of top of the end, 286 and a 287 XL, we saw a pretty significant, a 55 times improvement. This got us right about 28 seconds to perform everything. Now, you may expect it, since this is double here, we should have half here. Well, bear in mind that the test that I was doing is a combination of integer tests and floating points, so you're not going to get the full benefit of the math coprocessor for some of the tests, specifically the dry stone test. So that's the conclusion. I do plan to provide the test software that I wrote on GitHub, so look for that for others to play. And then this kind of inspired me for my next video. I'm really quite intrigued by this Orchid 286. I found an ad for it in a 1986 Byte magazine, and I think I'm going to do a deep dive on this Orchid 286. And so subscribe and stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching.